Bursting at the seams with 5 or 6 million people, half the population of Greece, the birthplace of democracy and theatre, and home to one of the most passionate encounters in European football, Olympiakos V Panathinaikos.
Is it George?
Yeah.
Is it George or?
It's George.
Yorgos, sorry.
No, George.
Right.
On any sort of a quest, it's important to have a trusty sidekick and guide. Preferably one called George.
Sort of what exactly are you doing here?
Well, I'm here for the Olympiakos Panathinaikos match on Sunday. It's part of a journey through Europe, trying to understand football and the passions it arouses, I suppose. In some way, I'm trying to come to terms with my own kind of childlike infatuation with football. And I imagine the best way to do that is to go to the biggest games in Europe.
Well, you couldn't have picked a better game. This is the game for all of Athens. This is what everyone's going to be watching.
Well, you haven't been to one yet, have you?
Not yet.
No.
When they start singing, it's all in unison for some reason. And everybody claps their hands at the same time, jumps up and down at the same time. It's just the noise levels are so much greater than any other derby game I've ever seen.
Is that what we can expect on Sunday night?
Yes, we hope so.
Yeah. It's not always like that at every match, is it?
It's not always, but if we win Panathinaikos, I think it will be like that.
Is it dangerous driving on the roads of Athens?
Very. If you're not from Athens and if you're not familiar with the roads, it really can be dangerous.
No disrespect to your own driving prowess, but we have shaved the wing mirrors of a few cars, haven't we?
Ah, well, that's the way you have to do it.
No, I mean, your judgment is impeccable, but it's a bit hair-raising.
I suppose, but that's the way you have to drive because some of the roads are so narrow and people park on both sides that, well, you just can't get through otherwise.
Athens was named after the goddess Athena, the daughter of Zeus. The story has it that she emerged fully formed from her father's head, a difficult birth by any standards. I bet you didn't hear Zeus complain. The Greeks have left us with an extraordinary legacy in the areas of theatre and politics and literature and scaffolding. This here is the Theatre of Dionysus. They've been putting on plays here since 500 BC. But get this, 1,000 years before that, there was a game in this part of the world called Episkairos. It was a kicking and throwing game, a bit like Gaelic football. Except, of course, if in ancient Greece, they played it in the nip. The Parthenon was built by Pericles, whose motto was moderation in everything. A concept clearly alien to the Greeks then and now, especially when it comes to football. George, have you heard of this author, Zofka Zinoviev? She's an English writer with a Russian name, married to a Greek diplomat, I think. And she's written a book, which in Greek I think is Evridice Street.
I don't know the book, but I'd be interested in reading it, I guess. What did she say?
Torture, torture, every embrace. I grew up like Greece in doubt and rags. To get a handle on the history and culture of Athens, I read this book by Zofka Zinoviev.
When Athens became capital,
in the 1830s, it was pretty much nothing, a little village. Then it was turned into the capital with lots of grand buildings put up and nice town houses. And what happened in the 20th century is just a series of one disaster after another. First with the refugees coming, then the war with the German occupation, where many, many tens of thousands of people starved to death. Then people had no work, had no money, nowhere to live. They were flooding into Athens because the villages were dead. And all people could do was to pull down the old houses and to build new blocks of flats. They had no time to think or money to think about green spaces or urban planning. They just threw it all up, and the chaos that resulted is something that now a lot of
Chaos being a Greek word.
Chaos being a Greek word.
Constantly reminded.
Why in this chaotic city, the cradle of civilization, is the rivalry between Panathinaikos and Olympiakos so fierce? Well, Olympiakos were formed in the port of Piraeus. This historically working-class club is by far the most popular and successful in the country, winning 33 titles, including 8 out of the last 9. That's enough to annoy anybody. Their green with envy rivals, Panathinaikos, which means all of Athens, have however fared better in Europe, reaching the final of the European Cup in 1971 at Wembley. Panathinaikos was founded in 1908 by a bunch of aristocrats. Now they are somewhat in the doldrums. Their stadium is about to be demolished, and they feel quite aggrieved.
Now, I always had a soft spot for Panathinaikos, mainly because of this, the shamrock. I always assumed, like many Irish people, that there was a strong Irish connection there. But the reality, sadly, is quite different.
Nothing at all, I think.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
It's deeply disappointing. There was various theories that I heard. First of all, I heard that Papazoglou, one of these early founders of the club, that he fought in World War I, and that he saw an Irish regiment in the British Army going into battle wearing clumps of shamrock on their tunics, and that this inspired him. He found this quite inspiring, this kind of bravery. Now, I know that that's a big pile of crap.
You're going to hear many stories, and maybe that's the good part of it.
Nobody has used it as an emblem of anything before Panathinaikos.
So the bottom line is there is absolutely no Irish connection between Panathinaikos.
I don't want to be definite, but I think that it's far-fetched.
The official explanation is that one of the founding members nicked the emblem and the colours from his old club in Constantinople. Now, where that obscure Turkish side got the shamrock, who knows? Probably some zealous Irish missionary trying to convert the entire Muslim world.
This is what you said this week. Twice a season, the whole of the country seems to lay down its tools, pin back its ears, and settle down for a derby that ranks in terms of rivalry and competitiveness with any in Europe. That's an outrageous claim, surely.
Well, you haven't been to one yet, have you?
Not yet.
No. Really is a game that does grip the nation. You know, they're the two top teams in the country. They have been for years. I mean, almost since football started in Greece. Olympiakos and Panathinaikos have been at the top of the tree. So it's not just a question of geographical rivalry. It actually means something. You know, the winner of this game on Sunday, well, I'm not going to say will win the championship, because at the moment Olympiakos have got a 6-point lead over Panathinaikos. Athens are stuck in there as well, but there's a lot riding on the result.
But when the Greek national team then won Euro 2004, I mean, that must have united football fans everywhere, and it must have meant a huge deal to the country as a whole.
Yes, you say that, and I just feel the hairs on the back of my neck go up again. It was absolutely extraordinary.
Diaz scored the only goal of the match as the Greeks again man-marked out some of the best players in the world.
When the final happened, the place just went berserk. The game finished. All the cheering you could hear on the balconies and so on, European champions. And it took about 15 seconds, I'd say, before I first heard the car doors close. You could hear the clunk as people started getting into their cars, leaning on the horns, and then for about the next 6, 7, 8 hours, the city went berserk. I went walking around, and Athens has got something like 4 million people. So they say, of which they estimated that 2 million were on the streets.
This is the best day of my life. Unbelievable. For all the Greeks all over the world, I think.
It has nothing to do with Greek football. It has nothing to do with Greek league or whoever. It was 25 people. The football players and the trainer, who had made the biggest miracle in the world of football history.
The manager that come in was one for basically organising people, and it seems that's what the Cypriots and the Greeks sort of need: organisation, being told where to be.